The Ole Miss Rebels are getting hot on the recruiting trail.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast and a crossover with Locked On Ole Miss. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Right now, you can get your opportunities with Monarch Money. Take control of your finances and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We got recruiting news to discuss, all kinds of it for Ole Miss. Multiple commitments, a couple other guys that are probably going to go to Ole Miss, at least we think. We're going to break them down, why I like them. And then we're going to talk about the keys for Ole Miss to make a college football playoff run to kind of round out the show. Some of the things you may not be looking at. We're going to have our expert, Stephen Willis, talk about that. How you doing today, Stephen?
I'm doing quite well. How you doing, Brian?
Doing well. It's just under 2 months until college football season. That means NFL training camps are opening up. We've got all kinds of stuff going on with recruiting. This is a good time of year for me, brother.
The Hall of Fame game for preseason NFL football is July 31st. We are in football month.
That is technically true. That's a great way to look at it. That is a great. Congrats to Stephen on coming up with that. That is a good statement. All right, Stephen. Let's start off with what I thought was a surprise, but you knew about it before me. You're an Ole Miss guy. This is surprising in the sense that a team like Ole Miss, who historically recruits very close to home, they don't have to go far with all the talent there. They go into the Dallas area. Duncanville High School, you could argue, is the best public school in the country for not only winning state titles in Texas, but producing players at all positions. The quarterback from Dunk just signed with Alabama. They've got kids at Texas. They got kids at A&M, Oklahoma, everywhere. Landon Barnes had offers from programs across the country. He's an edge player. We were just debating off air. Does he end up in a three-point stance? Is he going to be standing up? We're still not sure. But two things I know. He looks the part and the film shows him playing the part, meaning this is an SEC level defensive line kind of player. 6'3", 6'4", somewhere in that range, give or take 240, 250. He's a grown man already. Again, depending on how big he gets, this is a guy that may put his hand in the dirt permanently, but with Ole Miss running a three-man line, a hybrid defense part of the time with a stand-up outside linebacker that rushes, he could be that guy too. So as the saying goes, it'll take care of itself. But what were your thoughts when they got Barnes? And is this the kind of guy that we should expect now that Kiffin's got the program to this level for Ole Miss to get each year?
First of all, it's a really big deal for a Duncanville kid to go to Ole Miss. Ole Miss needed to get into that program. And Randall Joyner from the Dallas area, former SMU Mustang, defensive line coach at Ole Miss, he's been doing work in Dallas around that area. And Billy Glasscock, there's a lot of roots that Lane Kiffin has built in the personnel departments and GMs and things like that in Texas. So this was a recruitment that they wanted to win. They didn't have to win it. They wanted to win it because of what it could mean. I basically heard rumors after the official visit that it went way better than expected. And it almost was like an old school recruiting vibe of his official visit, to where it just didn't feel like it was all about money. It felt about fit. It felt about all the stuff we used to talk about. And if that's the case, once Ole Miss gets one of those players on campus, that the other stuff can win, Ole Miss is going to do really well. And they knocked the visit out of the park. And all of a sudden, you are signing Deuce Gerald's away from potentially the best defensive line group that Ole Miss has ever signed. And that includes 2 years ago when they signed 4 4-stars across the front. And I think this is a big deal, because if they get Deuce Gerald's, because I talk to you all the time, if Deuce Gerald's ends up at Ole Miss, he's probably 3 inches of height away from being a top 10 player in the entire country.
100%.
Yeah. And if you can land him, I know he's a legacy and all of that. He's a former MVP of the Polynesian Bowl, but you pair him on one side, the other side, Landon Barnes. You have Isaiah Williams doing the Centarian Perkins role. I mean, you've got something on the defensive line. They got something cooking. Pete Golden's got it going on.
Yeah, this is the first time that you and I have talked about it and seen it. We've said for a while, the next step for Ole Miss is getting the elite high school offensive and defensive line. That was the only thing left. The skill guys, it's pretty obvious. That's been eliminated. They're getting those kids. But now, not that they won't use the portal, but you start getting linemen like this that saves you money because portal's more expensive. So you can focus on other guys, whether it's quarterback, offensive line, D-line, whatever it is, that you still want one guy here or there. You can go big game hunting. And B, you're going to have more cohesion. There's still a lot of risk with taking guys out of the portal that everything meshes. High school kids going through the program for a few years that are committed to being in Oxford, I think for any program really, is still the best way to do it. Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, the programs that ended up in the Final Four last year, that's pretty much how they did it. Ole Miss is trending that way, and Kiffin still has that weird ability to kind of pick kids from the portal too. Like he's really good at it.
Yeah, their evaluation is second to none. They're really good. The best thing that Lane Kiffin has, they talk about it as offense and all of that stuff. The best thing that Lane Kiffin does is roster build.
I 100% agree. Now, I'm not taking away from his ability to call plays. He's very good at that.
Yeah.
But like he finds fits that he'll take kids that other teams don't necessarily want, and they may not start right away at Ole Miss, but they contribute and they end up being big time contributors. So it's kind of hard to argue with it. So getting Barnes was a great get for the Rebels. Also, they get J.C. Anderson out of the greater Chicago area. That's a big tight end. I know that Ole Miss likes big-bodied receivers, big tight ends to do a lot of different things. Get offers from all over the country, Notre Dame included. Like, that's a good fit for him, I think, at Ole Miss, for one. And it's also another political thing. That's not the first. That's the second kid off the top of my head they got from Illinois just in this class. If you're getting Chicago kids to supplement getting a Dallas kid here or there, a Memphis kid, and then, of course, they do such a good job within the state of Mississippi, you've got a chance to be a top 5 SEC recruiting team. I didn't really expect to say that at this juncture. I thought it'd be another couple of years, but they're trending that way. I mean, Bama, Georgia, LSU, those are pretty easy slam dunks for that most of the time. Texas, I think, can be that way now that Sark's kind of got on that roll. But why not Ole Miss as the next one? Their class can be just as good or better than Florida or A&M on most years, Tennessee. I think they could be a top 5 SEC recruiting team. And again, that helps you not have to use the portal as much, saves more money. There's a lot of good things about it. Do you think that Ole Miss wants to play more power football? I think JC's a pretty strong kid from watching him play. I think he can play detached, but I think his best ability long-term is to be the attached old school SEC tight end that on 3rd and 3, you can run behind him and he can seal the edge. What are your thoughts?
I think that especially with Austin Simmons, Lane Kiffin is really big about building his offense around what his players do really well. And what Austin Simmons does better than any other quarterback that's been at Ole Miss since probably Eli Manning is processing. He's able to see things pretty quickly, which means that you're going to have a lot more pro concepts show up than they did a year before. You had them last year. The big problem I had with Jackson Dart, all-time leading quarterback, really good quarterback. He's going to go down on a legend at Ole Miss. But one thing that whenever the chips got down, he would kind of go back to duck and chuck, throw the ball downfield. Trey Harris is down there somewhere throwing the ball like that. You saw the touchdown drive, the one drive, the sample size that we have for Austin Simmons against Georgia. It was quick game. The ball was out of his hands in a hurry. It was the point where Georgia could not get to the quarterback with their defensive line, and they were able to counteract that. And after that, I think Lane Kiffin saw that Austin Simmons was a little bit different. So they recruited tight ends in the portal. They went and got 3 players with tight end or big wide receiver bodies, including Luke Haas and Trace Bruckler. And then if you count Caleb Odom, who's a wide receiver, but he's 6'6", 230. And now somebody like this, that lets you know that I think they want to expand their offense a little bit. I think what Vanderbilt did last season kind of helps Ole Miss, the slowing it down, kind of varying your tempo. They're still going to go fast, but they want to have the ability to go slow as well. That pro-style offense is going to be an interesting thing to see. I think Joe Judge is going to have more of an influence on the offense than them was last year, and that is going to make it look more pro-style.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. Pro style offense, if you've got the right personnel, it's not going to shock anybody. But if you've got the personnel to do it, there's a reason that the NFL likes it. It's effective. And you mix in the spread with it, and somebody that's as intelligent as Austin Simmons, I think it's a really good idea. When we come back, we've got more recruiting to talk about because Ole Miss, they're not exactly slowing down here. We think they're going to get some more commitments. That is next here on this crossover, Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal. Ever wish managing your money would be a little bit easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you also build wealth. With Monarch Money, you can do things to help you figure out where your money's going quicker and faster in one place. Just as an example, when I go out to travel to scout, one of the things I do is I eat out probably a little bit more than I should instead of going to the grocery store, cooking something at the hotel, or just making sure I don't spend too much. Monarch Money is something that you could use in that same circumstance to make it a little bit easier for you to save cash. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you once again for making the Portal or Locked On Ole Miss your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in. Stephen Willis here with me talking a little Ole Miss Rebels recruiting and football. Already talked about the commitment, Stephen. Now it is time to talk about a couple more possibilities. Iverson McCoy, a corner out of Tupelo, and we also have Xavier McDonald, a kid that we've talked about I don't know how many times on this show. He's a really good wide receiver. Let's start off with Iverson McCoy. I know about him. I don't know him personally, but Jay Raylan McCoy, who committed to Florida, a kid that everybody recruited to, they're related. And he's like, I'm telling you, this kid's legit. And I went and watched the film. I don't know how many months ago it was. He was right. Ole Miss is trending for him. He's a kid that probably has been a little bit under the radar, to be honest with you. But Tupelo is a program that's got players. I'm a little surprised by that. What are your thoughts about him? Because we think he's going to go to Ole Miss. I think it's a good addition. This is one of the spots Ole Miss needs to up the talent from the high school ranks, being corner. That's a difference-making position. You know the deal. If you get corners, you can really change your program. What are your thoughts on McCoy?
I think Tupelo over the last couple of years have been a dominant defensive team in Mississippi high school football. They won a state championship a year ago, and a lot of that has to do with just having some dogs on the back end of that defense. They don't necessarily have the elite guy necessarily, although they did have Mason Dunn last year. But on the other side was Iverson McCoy, two cornerbacks that are going to likely go potentially to Ole Miss if they sign. And I think that's important for the same reason that Ole Miss had whenever they got a commitment for somebody from Duncanville. Tupelo traditionally has been a hard place for Ole Miss to recruit. I don't know why. It's the same distance between Ole Miss as it is from Mississippi State, but that has traditionally been a Mississippi State town. I think Iverson McCoy, he is a dog. He's that player that comes in that's a 3-star and actually makes plays in the fall camp and ends up playing some football for you. That is what it comes out. You're not going to have him as a 4 or a 5-star coming in. No, this is a 3-star that is just a good football player. He's going to make your team better. That's why Iverson McCoy is a valuable member and worth recruiting.
Well, he's got SEC offers. He plays at a really good program. He's got the family bloodlines. I'm all for it. I'm not sure if he's going to be better in zone or man. I liked his film overall, but he's just really consistent. He's got great hands. Most DBs, their hands suck. This is a kid that makes catches in contested situations. That's going to play out pretty well. Xavier McDonald is the other kid we need to talk about. One of the best wide receivers in the country. You and I had a chance to see him at the Under Armour event earlier this year. As an underclassman, he got invited. He's from Morton, Mississippi. Really long kid, but he's thin. He needs to gain some weight. But he's one of those guys that, again, you can probably play him inside at slot or outside. He's just a playmaker. He makes a lot of great catches, and he's pretty darn twitchy. I'm not surprised that he's going to end up at Ole Miss, but he's had overtures from, the likes of from LSU and Auburn and schools all over the country. I think this is a big deal because they've got to keep at least one, if not two of the three really good receivers in state this year. Jace Matthews, obviously, is a kid we've talked about on this show. And there's really not three. There's 4 or 5, really. But you get the point. Ole Miss should be able to keep these kind of kids home. And I understand the kids want to take visits, but this is a guy that can eventually turn into your number one wide receiver. And that's not something you want to let out of the state.
Yeah, when you look at it, we talked about Tristan Keys, and then Tristan Keys signed with Adidas. That made an Ole Miss signing problematic. Makes an LSU signing problematic because, as Brian will tell you, Adidas doesn't want Tristan Keys photographed in Nike apparel. I mean, and that is a bigger deal than you think about. So Miami, Texas A&M, and if Tennessee switches over like it's rumored, that obviously would be good landing spots. I actually really like Miami there for some reason right now, but that's another story altogether. Xavier McDonald, the only word that comes to mind whenever you watch film of him is explosive. It's just everything. It just is an explosive play waiting to happen. The only thing that he needs is a training table. He needs a training table when he gets to college. But he is going to play early, and he has a chance to have honestly, a Ryan Williams type impact at the next level. I can see him coming in, being the guy that you're going in to blow past that cornerback, and we need a big play. We're going to put you in packages, and that I can honestly see Lane Kiffin throwing a clipboard because he's wide open down the field, catching a pass 50 yards downfield and heading to the end zone. I really, really like Xavier McDonald. Now, one thing, I think I was talking with Mike Espy, who runs a receiving academy in Jackson, Mississippi, and he works with Shay Hodge, who is also from Morton, Mississippi. And he said that Shay Hodge said that Xavier McDonald would be the greatest player to ever come out of Morton High School. And I'm like, whoa. Shay Hodge, like I said, is from Morton High School. He's on the all-time reception list at Ole Miss, but also Deuce McAllister is from Morton High School.
That's a pretty good player right there.
Yeah, and so if he turns out to be the best player in the history of Morton High School, you're talking about a player that you want on your college roster, and I don't care what team you're on.
Yeah, that's a pretty big statement right there. I don't know if he's going to be better than Deuce McAllister.
No, I don't know that either.
Yeah, that's a high-end NFL player. I need to see.
That's a Pro Bowler. That's a Pro Bowler there. Yeah, he's got a little time to go before he's on that Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I think I'll wait on that. But nonetheless, he's a really good player. What about receivers in general? How many do you think Ole Miss wants to take in this class? Ideally, I know like Tristan Keys wants to come. You're going to take him no matter what. But how many do you think they want?
I don't know. There's the Guilford kid from Indiana that they're really in on. The Mississippi kids are still out there. It seems like they have 6 wide receivers that they're ready to go with. Although, I do want to say this. It's kind of interesting to see the Ole Miss showing up and recruiting going head-to-head with Ohio State. And it's happening more and more. Ole Miss winning, getting the player out of Duncanville, forgot his name, Landon Barnes.
Yeah.
Deuce Gerald's, Ole Miss, Ohio State. Guilford, Ole Miss, Ohio State. It's weird. And if you're recruiting against Ohio State, you probably got your evaluation correct. That's the way I look at it. I don't do the SEC thing with them. Ohio State recruits really well.
Yeah, Ohio State gets as good a roster as anybody in football. They know what they're doing on evaluations. I think that's Pretty safe to say that. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Ole Miss's chances to make the college football playoff. That's next here in this crossover Locked On Ole Miss and the Portal. Thank you once again for making both the Locked On the Portal and Locked On Ole Miss your first listens each and every day. Stephen, we're getting close to football season. There's always these thoughts. Yeah, I know. There's always these thoughts about, okay, what are the things that I'm missing? Whether it's the team I cover, some of the teams on the schedule, what are some of the little things that you think should be brought up that maybe have not been? Maybe they have, but probably not. You know Ole Miss as well as anybody. That can be a key factor for the Rebels getting over the top and winning at least 9 games and being in contention again. If you win 10, you're probably in. What are some of the little things you think need to happen for the Rebels to make that run?
I think the safety position at Ole Miss, they need to hit on some of the spring transfers that they brought in, Whitehead Williams, and they need to hit on a couple of those because that was problematic in the spring. I like Keon Young, Cortez Thomas, and LaDarian Clardy, those 3 players, but they are true freshmen. You need somebody that is an upperclassman handling business. The kid that transferred from Louisiana Monroe, Whitehead Williams, I think he is going to play a big role. I think Sage Ryan has to convert and take well to free safety. And I think whoever plays the slot corner, they're going to have to take that as well because John Saunders was kind of an underrated piece of Ole Miss's defense the last couple of years. So I think that is the ultimate thing. If Ole Miss makes the playoffs, it's because those 3 safety positions were taken care of and they hit on them.
That is a really important factor. I mean, you think about the schedule that the Rebels have. Georgia's Georgia, whether they throw it or not, it's hard to play safety against them because that run game is going to suck you in. You know LSU is going to throw the ball all over the place. The safety position is going to be in the crosshairs. Mississippi State, they're going to probably throw it around and save some stuff for Ole Miss. It's the Egg Bowl. And that's just the start of the schedule. And that doesn't even count some of the other road games that are randomly in there. Oklahoma's on the road, and they got Florida. I mean, that's a really unique schedule. If you're a safety at Ole Miss, you will be challenged this year, even more than normal. It's not going to be easy. For me, it's the offensive line. I'm really curious to see what the mesh is. I think they're going to be pretty good. But if they're going to make the playoff, pretty good's not enough. You're going to have to find a way to be able to run 4-minute offense when everybody in the stadium, including the other team's defense coordinator, knows you're going to be able to. They got good running backs. And I don't think people realize just how mobile they will soon. A certain quarterback at Ole Miss is, but you got to give him a little room to get started. So if they can run block at a high enough level, we know they're going to throw the ball. I think that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit answer. That's safe with the Kiffin offense. But if the Rebels can run the ball and do it consistent with base plays, inside zone, counter, trap, and just anything that they do out of their base package, they're going to be almost impossible to stop because they've got a really good group of receivers. And I'm going to throw out a bone to my guy Honeycomb at slot receiver, Caden Lee. I've already said it several times. I think he will lead the SEC in receptions, total number. But he needs to have some opportunities where the other team thinks it's going to be a run. Then a guy like Caden Lee gets a little edge because that slot corner, that safety over him, thinks that it's going to be a running play and you can run play action. That's when you can hit some yak yardage. And Caden can really run. So I'm hoping that for him anyway because he's just a great guy. But if Ole Miss can run the ball and that offensive line is very consistent, I think they're going to the playoff. We'll see if I'm right. But if I'm not, they could be 8-4 real quick and out of the running before they even get to the Egg Bowl. Because that schedule is not friendly. So you got to be able to pound the football. And I think up front is the biggest key. I think they need to be undefeated going to Georgia too. That's the other thing. If they'll be favored in all the games, don't let other teams slip up. Don't have a Kentucky moment. If you're undefeated going to Georgia, you've got margin for error to lose 2 games in the last 6. You can go 4-2, close out, and you're going to make the college football playoff. Which game do you think is the most difficult prior to playing UGA? That's a tough one right there for me. I thought about this earlier too. LSU's always in that discussion and all that. I'm debatable on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's probably the LSU game because there are 2 such identical teams as far as every computer graphic that puts out LSU and Ole Miss are side by side. So Ole Miss playing that game at home is an advantage. Playing 5 out of their first 6 games at home or something like that, an advantage. There's 8 home games this season. 2 road games that are back to back. There's a 3-game stretch or a 4-game stretch that is Georgia, at Oklahoma. Then you have South Carolina and the Citadel or something like that. That 4-game stretch is going to tell the tale. Not the Citadel, but the other 3.
Well, by the time you get to the Citadel, you'll need a kind of an off week because that's a lot of physical football. That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Oklahoma may not score much, but they got a defense.
Yeah, and they got some dudes too this year. I think they're going to be a lot better. I think Georgia and Oklahoma, those are the 2 games that I'm kind of leaning. Like next week, I do my W's and L's, and I'm trying to go through the schedule. If Ole Miss goes 10-2, those 2 games, the Georgia game at Georgia and at Oklahoma, is the likely losses.
I could see that. I picked Ole Miss to beat Georgia just because it's time for something different. I don't trust Georgia's quarterback, but if you get beat at Georgia, that's not exactly shocking. That's a
they've lost one time since 2019 or something like that.
Yeah, they just don't get beat at home very much. They don't. They play much better at home than they do outside of that stadium for some reason. But it is what it is. Stephen, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
You can catch my stuff at Locked On Ole Miss and available wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheStephenWillis. Be sure to give us a like, a subscribe, all of that stuff. It helps out the channel and is how we keep this free. And Brian's awesome, and you get all this recruiting coverage and Locked On. And Brian, we're going to get bigger over the next weeks and months, and everybody's going to be pretty impressed by that. So stick around for that, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, appreciate it. The Portal Podcast can be found wherever you download your pods on the go, going to the gym, going to the store, anywhere else, Spotify, Apple, and everywhere. And, of course, on YouTube. We'll see you again. This has been The Portal and Locked On Ole Miss crossover.